We now rise back from recess. Excuse me. Up next, we have the Department of Public Safety, represented today by the Acting Director, Officer Calvo. The department submitted a request of 1.4 million with 45 FTEs, but it looks like the governor approved an additional 2 FTE. However, there's no changes to the budget allocation for those salaries. I know that in the current fiscal year, DPS or all law enforcement officers, for that matter, are on a 100% salary schedule, but in the upcoming fiscal year, the austerity will be applied across the board to include DPS. And so I know the regular hours for DPS is at 86, correct? And so the 10% will be applied to that. The department also requested $883,000 in operational costs, and none was allocated to cover or to provide for any of those expenses. And so at this time, I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to the Acting Director to provide any statements if he so chooses.
Good afternoon, Senators. Before I do, I would like to extend the deeply sincere apology for our Resident Director, Ed Martita Jr., for not being here today for the hearing. I am the appointed Acting Director for DPS. I am Captain Noel Calvo. Yes, we did some budget submission that we had requested from the previous years. So we're just gonna mimic the request to see if we can get those requests. So I am ready to answer some of the questions that you may ask me, and I hope that I can answer them according to what our director has in plan.
Thank you. Were you involved in the preparation of the budget for next fiscal year?
For next fiscal year, yes, it was me and Artie were actually. I am trying to figure out what numbers to be addressed, but I wasn't forward enough so much other information based in personal side.
Okay. And how have you managed thus far in regards to your operation expenses, provided that no funding was allocated for the current fiscal year?
Well, with the situation with the operational fund, it was actually a really big challenge with us in DPS. We try to manage it by seeking more requests to our house and the mayor to assist us in some of the challenges that we have. They did request from the last previous year that we should try and reduce our revolving fund to try and help us with the operational needs, but even with our revolving fund does not give enough to actually cover all of the expenses that's needed. And a lot of these operational funds also does come out from a lot of the officers' pocket to address some of the needs for the department to continue afloat and moving forward for the safeguarding and the community's needs as well.
Thank you. Since the start of the fiscal year, to your knowledge, how many officers or administrative staff have resigned?
Right now, to my knowledge, we have 3 that resigned and 3 that actually transferred to Saipan.
But they're still being paid for out of the local budget?
The 2 right now are actually being paid on their Saipan account right now. 1 is still temporarily transferred for due to medical.
Have you looked at reallocating some of those personnel costs from those vacant positions to your operations?
We can try to use that
Yeah.
and use those to allow them that position that were actually was moved. A lot of those positions are actually, the budgets were taken away. That's why I have 3 vacant positions that is not unbudgeted right now.
But these were not from the current resignation of, you mentioned that 3 resigned this year, right?
Yes, sir.
So they may not be budgeted for next year, but those budget fundings should be available right now. So if no request has been made, I would highly encourage your department to work with OMB to try to reallocate some of
I
those
did.
monies.
I did talk to the administrative officer about that, the 3 slots that were actually vacated already.
Mhm.
And according to her, OMB has informed her that those, every time we vacate a position, the OMB removes the fundings from,
Mhm.
and they put a dollar for those FTEs, so.
No, that shouldn't be the case, but if it is, and if you have communications in regards to that, then please share it with us. But that those fundings should still be available in the event that the department would like to rehire.
That's where my knowledge was supposed to be, where as soon as they get vacated, those positions are supposed to be still considered budgeted.
Right.
And I did request, because I'm trying to open up more positions for those 3 positions, but every time I ask them, they tell me that we got those positions already were taken away, those budget was removed from the
Yeah, it
position.
may have been taken away for next, for next fiscal year. Because otherwise, I mean, yeah. But anyway, if you have any correspondence in regards to that request, please share it with us so that we can also try to inquire. And so right now, I know the mayor has mentioned that she addresses some of the department's needs in regards to utilities and communications. Do you know how much of your revolving fund account this year you've used on your operations?
Right now, the last I got, when I get the information from our administrative officer, we have about 43,000 in a revolving fund. But throughout the year, we've been using them to pay some arrears from the IT needs and fuel and the needs for the departments for fuel and some of the motor vehicles needs. So right now, as my last information that we got with our revolving fund, we're only down to about $680 some.
Okay. Speaking of motor vehicle, when do you expect the BMV to be moved out of the current office?
Right now, due to funding issue, we need materials to actually rebuild the facility for motor vehicle to be certified with this real ID spec down at the main office. But for now, pending, like I said, pending with fundings to actually get materials to actually start renovating the facility, we're still on hold on that part.
Okay. We have until May of next year, right, in order to fully implement the real ID, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Have your department reached out to the mayor in regards to that, the renovation or the completion of what was renovated a while back already, and it's been over a year now that we're still waiting on updates? I think the mayor may have mentioned at one point that there was funding to complete the renovation, but as far as I don't know, whether it be the bidding process or the contractor, no updates in regards to the funding that I think was identified by the mayor's office?
Well, we did, for the last cabinet meeting that I had with the mayor, she did inform me that they are looking for, they have the budget to get for the materials right now, according to her, Chief Mahoney is saying that the issue is with the hardware, he doesn't have enough materials to be purchased for that, to actually rebuild back the facility.
Okay. Maybe when we leave here today, if you can work with your team to set up the meeting again with the mayor's office to see what is actually needed to get the project moving forward so that you can vacate your office and then finance can come in. But also because in the past two delegation session, we've appropriated monies for infrastructure projects, but none of the, I know DPS wasn't brought up in any of the discussion because from our understanding, there was funding to cover that. But if that's an issue right now, maybe future funding we can include to address infrastructure projects for that building renovation. And so if you can just get the update and then let us know, and then we'll try to see how we can assist in that sense. Does your department receive any compact impact funds?
To my knowledge, sir, I don't have that information right now.
Okay. And if you're able to get that, please let us know. I know DPS is a big recipient of compact impact, and so. Your current personnel, the officers that you have, is that sufficient for Rota, I guess? With all those that have gone and with what you need to ensure that, we don't spend anything or too much on overtime, and considering the austerity measures that will now be applied to law enforcement?
Oh, right now, because of the decline of officer, actually, we need to establish back those officers because from what I was saying, I remember hearing some of the criticism out there that there's so many officers on this island compared to the island's need. But if you're looking from the outside in, you guys see it's a lot. But from the inside out, it's a different story because the department is actually broken down into different sections. And each section has different needs and amount of personnel needs to cover those sections. Right now, our patrol section are right now declining with personnel, and the fact that by actually the lack of manpower right now, we're using a lot of resources by getting officers from different sections to actually try and cover those, but increasing in overtime as well. And the thing is, we need to understand that back then in the 1980s and 90s, with the decline of officers present, the increase in criminal activities. So when I started in this department, I started in 2004, and I seen how the impact of having a small amount of officers present out in the community, it does not enough to deter the crime from happening. So what we try to do is we try to bring more officers present, so that way we can mitigate the problems of the crime. So when we increase the population of officers, it actually starts showing the impact by decreasing by being out there, being vigilant, deterring criminal activities, and we show that the decline of criminal activities is happening. Mm-hmm. And to make it understand that every officer out there right now, we're just human, right? We do get hurt, we do get sick, we do have family issues that we need to attend. And right now, during my time, we only have 2 officers per shift. Imagine responding to a riot with just 1 person by yourself. You know how hard is it and how dangerous that may be? We may have all the weapons we might have all the tools that we have, but they're all have to be justified to use them. So the more numbers that we put out, the more easier for the officers to work hand in hand to actually subdue any criminal activities that's out there. So this is why we need those manpowers, because some of them, they do get sick. Some of them get sick more than 3 days. So by having 2 personnel present, it does not help the officer itself to actually safeguard themselves out there in the community. Right now, with the Second Amendment being passed, anybody can have any kind of gun on their possession. We don't know how, we can't say that by one person out there, we don't know who we're responding to. We may know it's a small community, but the society is changing, people are changing. Knock on wood that we don't get what we have in the States. Which is why us being present, more people out there, more officers out there present is actually helping eliminate and deterring all criminal activity. So yes, in all honesty, we need more manpower. As long as we have the same manpower when we first started with the 40-some officers present, it actually helped all the section to actually move and work well together. Because what we can do is, in order for us to curb the situation of overtime and stuff, by having enough numbers of officers present in the patrol itself, even if one officer goes on sick leave, we still have enough officers to actually continue on moving safely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Now brings me to my next question, which is how many current sworn officers are employed right now in the department? Absent the ones that transferred in.
Right now, we have a total of 27 officers.
27?
Yes.
So you said you started with 40 some
We started with 40-some
at the beginning of this fiscal year, or?
No, sir. We had enough numbers on 2015.
From 2015 to
2015,
today?
our numbers start picking up. By every year, we lose 1 or 2 officers at a time. So right now, we have about, let me think back, about 37 officers.
Sorry, 30?
37.
37. How many divisions are there?
There are 3 divisions.
What are they?
The admin, police operation, and motor vehicle.
So where does voting fall under?
Okay, the police operation, we break that into 2 sections. We got the police operation section, and we got the special operations section. The police operations section handles the traffic, the highway patrol, and criminal investigation, and community outreach program. Now, for the special operations section, it handles the MPS, which is the Marine Patrol section, special investigation section, armory, and school resource officer.
So how many are assigned to like voting?
Right now, the
On a
voting,
daily?
there is a total of 6 personnel.
6?
Yes.
Are they trained in other areas that they can maybe reassign them to?
So right now, those 6 officers that we have are most of them now are trained in the field of voting. Some of them are BIU, some of them are diverse PT, some of them are boat operators. So us having that amount of personnel there actually helps us to run the operation 7 days a week, rather than in the past where there's only few and we're only running it Monday to Friday. So with this amount, we actually breaking in the team into up to from Monday to Sunday. So even in the weekend, the operation is still ongoing. There's always another voting safety personnel on those days.
Right. Let's say in a month, how many calls do you receive in relation to any voting assistance or any incidents that require voting assistance?
Well, right now, in the month, say, we sometimes have like 2 to 3 calls, but sometimes us responding to the calls, or sometimes when we get the call, when we get the information from the U.S. Coast Guard that there is a distress calls out there, we have those guys already on standby to respond to those calls, if in case the Coast Guard says we need Rota DPS's assistance. So by having those personnel Monday to Sunday, it actually helps alleviate the part of having people to be brought in for overtime. Because as soon as we get a day where there's no Marine personnel on those days, and as soon as we get a call, we have to bring people in, and then we start incurring more overtime on those uncovered days.
What about SROs? How many are there?
There's only one.
And so right now, have any of these officers receive overtime in the current fiscal year?
Yes.
Is this something that is reoccurring every pay period, or is it only on?
Right now, because of the amount of overtime being utilized for patrol to cover shift, because some of the time patrol only has 3 personnel per shift. A lot of times, 2 of them goes out on leave. So we have to bring in people to use, to augment those manpower needed. So that's where the bulk of the overtime actually come in play is at patrol site. And yes, sometimes officers do come in for overtime for special operation that requires us to add a little bit more personnel into. Right now, because of the amount that we're burning of overtime, this is where I use Marine Patrol section to actually, rather than what do you call this, incur more overtime, we try to work together to see how we can curb the situation where we don't have to bring people in. But the problem is we're still having this situation because there's still officers are needing to go out on medical sick leave and some of them are actually, they get burned out.
Do you know what your overtime costs have been up year to date? So it would be safe to say that every pay period there's overtime incurred.
Yes. Sometimes over like 1,000, sometimes 4,000, depending on how many personnel needs to be, how many section or shift needs to be assisted.
So even if we were to provide additional officers, do you know if there are any plans for Centro to start up an academy?
I have spoken to Commissioner Macarnas regarding opening up a new academy, and he has informed me that he's just waiting for enough funding to actually open new academy because we all need more officers coming in. So until that's such time, then I'm not sure when he's gonna start, but he did inform me that there is a plan on that.
Okay.
A new academy.
Have there been any directive or maybe discussions with the commissioner in regards to starting to implement, let's just say, vehicle registration and insurance? Because there seems to be a shift right now in Saipan. As a matter of fact, even up until today, you see a lot of cars being towed on the side of the road. I know 2 people that have been pulled over and their cars have been towed because their vehicle is not registered or at the very minimum get their car insured. And nowadays you can get a basic liability insurance for as low as 100 some for the entire year. And so when I think, and I'm not sure, but this was brought up during his confirmation hearing that we need to start, implementing this structure or even, bringing it back so that people can, get back to, at the end of the day, it's all about protecting themselves, right? In terms of insurance and so are we there yet? Or do you think this is something that maybe our department should start looking at and starting to get people to come in and register so that also generates some revenue to allow your department to have fuel for officers to go out and patrol the streets?
Well, I haven't got that directive from the commissioner at this time, but it's a promising, way of trying to gather more fundings using that kind of method. The problem is, Rota does not have any impound lot to actually impound vehicles out there because of that and put in an impound lot. And that's where we have a problem with. Without an impound lot, we can't take those cars and put it anywhere else unsecured. Because if something happens to those vehicles, we're responsible for them. So
maybe not so much about impounding. I understand that concern, but maybe just start issuing warnings at least as a start so that people can start getting it registered. And if you can't impound it, just find them. And
I have spoke to the patrol section, the traffic and everyone that we need to start actually going back out and start, say, not basically, harassing the community, but actually warning them, letting them know that, especially those vehicles that are unregistered, to start going in and registering the vehicle because actually they're in violation of the laws, right? So this is why we try to have them go out and start doing that. But even with that, we are limited also in resources and fuel to constantly have those vehicles in and out of the department to actually be out there. So we try to do our best, to actually go with that kind of the situation, because yes, that's where we generate our funding, using our revolving fund for them to register. But even with that, we register about, let's say, 15 cars, 10 to 15 cars a month, right? So we do actually have those already in place that we start, having the officers actually going out and start, checking those things.
Yeah. No, thank you. And not just the general public, but even government agencies, a lot of these cars are now registered and, have them use some of their funds to register their vehicles, get it insured, because even today, you see a lot of these government vehicles that are damaged. And so whether it's the fault of the operator, of the government employee, or the civilian that hits government vehicles, which damages, government property, and there's no insurance to pay for that or repair. And so, and and that's why we've allowed for the current fiscal year for the government we've suspended the restrictions on the revolving fund to allow for these agencies to use it as whatever they see necessary. And so these are really the saving grace, right? The revolving funds that over the years departments have allowed to build up. And so we hope that maybe DPS can start generating some of that revenue to be self-sufficient in the case where we are not able to provide for some of your operational needs. And so, and just to be consistent among the islands, if Saipan's already, implementing this policy, maybe it's about time we start getting our people. I know a lot of us are guilty of also not getting our vehicles registered, but it's I guess they wait till they ever get that ticket before they end up going to register the vehicle. But I have a few more, but I'll go ahead and hand the floor over to any of the members. Anyone to ask questions? And I recognize the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Captain. Thank you for coming in to provide us with some answers regarding our inquiries. So I'd like to start with the personnel. So it appears that the budget submission from your department requested for 45 FTEs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the governor allocated 47 instead, so that's good news. Would you happen to know what the 2 additional FTEs would be for?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Okay. And so we moved down to overtime compensation. I know that the budget request that you guys had submitted was for 100,000. You did confirm that your department incurs overtime on a pay period, per pay period, right? And you had mentioned 1,000 or more sometimes. Would you mind clarifying? Is that 1,000 hours or $1,000?
Well, depends on the situation. It's more like the dollar sign,
Also,
but it's always depending on the day, the week, because
Sure.
on Rota we have a lot of activities actually happening. Not only coverage here, we have distress calls, we have what do you call this, outreach programs that requires police to come in and work. So those are the numbers that's picking up. It always varies depending from the week that we
Okay.
have.
so just to be clear, you're incurring at least $1,000 or more on a
Any
per
given,
period, okay. And would you say, I know that you had talked about, the staff being overworked and just burnt out. Some of them may be on medical leave or, just out sick for a few days. And I completely support your idea of a buddy system, right? Like for safety reasons, nobody should have to go out there by themselves, even if they're well equipped with all the gadgets that you guys have. having that extra set of eyes to, for backup is, critical and essential. So would you say that the current FTEs right now at 45 is sufficient to operate your department? I mean, if funding wasn't an issue, what would be your ideal number of police officers that you could have to ensure that, that you have, a buddy system for every vehicle that's out there and for whatever other activities that you have? What would you say is the ideal number of officers that your department needs? It's not one, but like needs.
For
Right
the
now, you said
police, I
is
know this one was combined with both administration and police itself. The numbers of the 47 or 45 that we have. But for the police personnel itself, if we have that number, the 45 number, that would actually be very ideal for us to actually can work sufficiently and effectively and even curbing the situation of covering shift, because we will still have enough officers to actually still respond to cases without, even with one officer out, out on sick leave or anything like that.
Yeah. So the 45 is all officers, or it consists of like
It's
administrative?
considered with admin as well.
Okay, so out of the 45, how many are police officers?
Right now, there's about 37 police.
37, okay. Okay. And you did talk about, the crimes that occur here on Rota. Would you say that the number of crimes have increased this year, or compared to last year, or it's kind of status quo?
Well, that's what I was saying. I've been in the department for 20 years, and I've seen the changes within all the years that since I started. When I first started, I have complaints back to back to back. It's always an in and out kind of thing. And the numbers, after we started increasing the number of personnel in the department, we saw the difference now between that era to from 2015 and up. We see how we start curbing
Okay, because there's more police presence
more
and
police
that,
presence, yes.
okay. So that kind of helped curb the numbers down. That's good. Would you say, I was curious, so I'm not sure if you're aware, but like, in Saipan, every month there's a report that comes out from DPS that tells the people the number of calls they received, and it even breaks it down to what types of calls those were, whether they're distress calls or all the different types of calls that come in. Does Rota do that?
Yes, we do.
Or is the report that they put out on the paper inclusive of Rota, I should ask?
No, it's actually every island has their own
Okay.
case log. So
Okay,
we do have our numbers case log. So it depends on the month, right? It's some month is great, some month is not so great. So it always changes. So normally in a month for criminal activities combined with civil complaints and stuff like that, we're coming up to like 30 to 50 calls in the whole month combined.
okay.
So
Specifically to criminal activities, would you say more of it is on domestic violence, or is it more on like drugs, or?
well, a lot of them are actually domestic calls, domestic complaints calls and theft calls that we have.
Okay. Have you seen an increase in theft?
Right now, it's actually, it varies. Like I said, it depends on the month. Sometimes this month we have 5, sometimes 2, sometimes none.
Okay.
It always changes.
I mean,
can't
I guess
say-
in comparison to Saipan,
Right.
you guys
Compared
are.
to last year, though, yes, we have a more decrease right now compared to last year's calls.
Okay, well, that's really great news to hear because, on Saipan, like that number has actually increased tremendously. A lot of it is said to be attributed to, the austerity measures that have been put in place and just the overall stress that it puts on our people, right? So people turn to all kinds of things when they're under stress and when they are under influence, whether or not it's drugs or alcohol, they tend to commit unnecessary crimes to provide for their stuff. So anyway, so I'm really happy to hear that that number is very low for the island of Rota. Um, and then, okay. And then, so can we go back to, you said that there were 3 transferred to Saipan, correct? 3 officers transferred to Saipan?
Yeah.
And then 2 of them are paid under the Saipan account?
From my last answer, yes.
And 1 is still being paid under Rota?
Rota.
Is there a reason why Rota is paying for an officer that's detailed to Saipan?
Well, that because there was one of, like, the officer actually has, the reason why he required for temporary movement to Saipan because his spouse actually, it's a family
Okay,
thing that
okay.
we had to accommodate. His
Okay, thank you for that. And then, so you say there's 3 divisions under your department, so you have admin, police officers, and what was the third one?
motor vehicle.
Oh, motor vehicle, okay. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with the personnel. For the travel, although you guys had requested for 120,000, the governor's proposal shows 0. But I was just curious, what is the $120,000 in travel for?
The $120,000 in travel is because it's for the purpose of training purpose to be sent officers out to upgrade enhance their knowledge and activities. Also combined with the, when we have detainees that are being Rule 5, we have to transport these detainees with the officer to Saipan for confinement. So that's why the numbers we
Okay, and that's good that you're explaining that. So what happens that now that with the 0 funding for travel, how are the expenses being paid for those detainees that have to be transferred, to wherever they need to be?
That's where we have a little bit of the challenge there because we do have we have to send officer and patient or arrestee to Saipan. Sometimes we ask the help from the mayor. The mayor will assist us with travel, or the hospital will pay. But right now we have, they're not assisting for the officer to go. It's only the patient. When we get to Saipan, the problem is we don't have the fundings also for lodging, food, and stuff like that. And that's where we have the challenge. The great thing is we have Commissioner McBride right now very helpful, and I meant to help us on the vehicle, at least for the vehicle part. And for the food part, my wife is here. We did try to give the officer fundings for food from our pocket to assist the officer because we don't have fundings for any of those things.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry that you have to, incur that out of your own pocket. Is that something that you have shared with Commissioner Macaranes?
I haven't shared that, but we did share that to the Commissioner of DOC regarding our issue when it comes to this thing. He did inform us that he's gonna try and help us on those questions, the meal portion, and see how he can help us with the travel of the officer and stuff like that. But till now, because even him is still on the works also requesting for budgets to assist.
And when these kinds of travels occur, what's the average number of stay on Saipan?
Average is depending on the flight, man. Sometimes the officer, we try to get them there in the morning and get them back on the same flight in the evening. But a lot of times there's no seats available, so sometimes they stay overnight.
Got it. Okay. And how frequent would you say these kinds of trips happen?
Just last month alone, we had to send the officer 3 times.
Okay, so it's not
It's not an,
okay.
an everyday thing, but we
Okay.
try to,
I'm just trying to equate that to, since you're helping them out personally, what impact it would have on your personal finances, and your family. So thank you for your generosity and for your kind heart. Um, and then, so speaking of training, when SIPEM sends their officers out for training, I'm not aware of any other, but if they do they normally include Rota?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. And then just one more, Chair. Under machinery, tools, and equipment, there's a request for $45,000. And I was just wondering what is that for?
Well, we have a trace technician in our department, but he can't do so much with trying to help at least fix our vehicles or whatever, how do you call this, whatever mechanical needs to be done to be, because we don't have tools.
Okay.
A lot of times, our trace techs actually use all his personal tools to actually make him do his job. So we try and find funding so we can get the tools for the department for his use.
I hate it. Well, thank you for being resourceful. I mean, the tools is one thing, but, if you were to pay for labor, that would be definitely, another cost. I know I said I only have one, but I forgot to ask. So since the overtime is zero funded, what would be the source of funding, knowing that you guys do incur overtime on a, normal basis?
Right now, I'm very actually, happy that the mayor's actually at least covering us in some of those overtime. So that's why we try to curb that situation where we don't have to continue
Sure.
incurring more overtime, because we all know the mayor also needs those fundings to assist in other departments. So it cannot be just us. This is why we're requesting for fundings for us to help also our department in that situation where we have to bring people and we don't have to worry about,
Yes.
harming other departments based on the fundings.
Right, because as it was stated earlier, right, whenever money is given to you, it's being taken someplace else, right? And so it's good to be mindful of that. I'm just worried that, in the event that the mayor is also strapped for cash, how is the department going to be able to pay for those employees who have already provided the service, right, and are due for those overtime pay? So that's definitely a concern that needs to be addressed, because, federal regulations with regards to labor is not something that you want to really mess with, right? It's a very serious violation. So we'll definitely take a look at that, and, I'll talk to the chair, see if we can really consider allocating some money to just kind of help supplement the overtime. It's important, That's all I have, Chair. I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Senator Govelton.
Thank you, Chairman Manuel. Good afternoon,
Good.
Captain Caldwell. I wanted to inform you, just as the chairman said, that the three that resigned, and there should be funding available there because they didn't obviously use up the whole fiscal year. And I encourage you to fly up to Saipan and talk to them and fight for that money, because every year the budget becomes a law. And nobody can modify a law except the legislature. So you need to fight tooth and nail for that, first of all. Help me understand, what are your revolving accounts? What are the funding sources for it?
Right now, our revolving fund only comes from the registration on motor vehicle.
And how much on average per year does that generate?
I don't have the number, ma'am, for the previous years, but from what we got, we have about I got about 136 vehicles registered this year from January to July alone. You were thinking about $8,000, I guess.
8160. So that's the only revolving account you guys have, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Give me a- Okay. Compact impact funds, you probably didn't get any because the United States Congress didn't appropriate for the last 2 fiscal years, I think. We hope that'll change in the future, but until then, no, none of us get compact impact funds, and the last appropriation, I believe, was 2 million only, which usually goes to departments that are affected by the migration of FSM citizens. That's what compact impact funds are appropriated for. So things like the hospital, police, corrections, those normally would receive compact impact funds. You said you have 37 officers, but you have 45 personnel currently.
Currently, yes, ma'am.
So it's safe to say that you have 8 admin personnel. What types of, I'm trying to understand and hear you justify your budget request, and so far I'm not sold on it. What types of criminal offenses does DPS Rota respond to?
What kind of criminal offenses do
Yeah.
we respond to?
You said the majority of them are primarily domestic disputes, some theft.
Right now, we're dealing with a lot of cases with domestic dispute, theft, drugs influx right now is coming in.
Is there an increase in that?
Well, we don't have per se the actual data collection of that, but from hearsays and as working with customs, we're trying to track down all those the information that we get from outside.
Because we had customs here, or your wife actually, which customs falls under. And I heard the number tossed around, like 2 grams is what is, let's say, the average that is actually documented. And I encourage department heads here to keep statistics so that we can better make decisions to try and justify the money that is associated to that. So right now, you're asking for 100,000 in overtime, but we don't know the instances of the types of crimes that DPS responds to. I don't know how frequent you guys respond to the different criminal activities. So that's why I'm not actually sold on, because for me, it appears this is inflated because I don't have statistics attached to it. I don't understand why. It's not to say we're not going to try and help you out, but it would better inform us if we had statistics or something to base it off of, is what I'm saying. You have 3 personnel on shift on patrol per shift, and there are 4 shifts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Heard it. And that is, of course, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Do you feel, you just mentioned that you need more officers, but do you feel that 37 officers is sufficient for, and according to the statistics of 2020, for a population of 1,800 and some change? 37 officers for a population of 1,300, and they're not clustered in one particular area. I understand that the dispersion is expansive, and it has the statistical breakdown of the villages, how many are residing in this village and how many, the bulk being in Sinapalo right now. Is there a substation in Sinapalo?
As of now, none.
Perhaps that's something that you guys can consider in future, because the bulk of the population of Rota is in Sinapalo, not Songsun village.
I understand. And this is where I was getting, trying to make you understand. When our numbers back then was up to the 40s officer, we actually put officers up here and officers down in the village. When you're looking at, like I said, when you're in the beginning of my testimony, when you're looking at things from the outside in, you're saying everything is good. But when you're in the inside looking out, everything is a different story. Because other officers, like I said, what we try to do is make sure that we continue having enough officers to actually continue working sufficiently to cover all these sectors, because the main station is down in Songsun village, all right?
Yes, that's why I'm alluding
The
to,
bulk of the community is
asked
up
if
here.
there was a substation up in,
That we can't afford to put a substation in the public, because for now, I'm here asking for money. And one of that is, maybe we can get money for a substation, but we can't get a substation right now. So the reason why we're asking to make sure that we have those officers in place, enough officers to continue, that we can put officers up here to watch Sinapalo, and also have officers down in the village. Because when you look at two to three officers, right? One officer is not being used.
of
Because one
course,
officer.
because they have to be,
dispatched,
yes.
right? So
I
that would be two
understand that.
officers. So my thing here is, I don't allow the officer to respond to any complaints by themselves.
And you shouldn't.
Yes, I shouldn't. So this is why having 5 officers in a section, in a shift, will be more significant, because 2 officers will be together up here and 2 will be down there while one's at dispatch. I have incident in my experience where there's only 2 of us working, and then we have to respond to 2 simultaneous complaints. So we have to figure out which is worse. Somebody that's almost dying and somebody that's fighting. So where do we put ourselves there? Now we put in the community in harm's way. Because why? We cannot be.
That's why it's important for me to understand what types of criminal activities is DPS responding to, and because of the severity of the different crimes. Theft is
When we
less
say
violent
domestic, it's
than,
not being just argument.
I'm sorry?
When we say domestic violence, it's not only argument, right? Some of them
Of course.
becomes assault and battery. Some of them becomes assault with a deadly weapon.
Of
Some
course.
of them are different scenarios for different complaints. So
Yes.
us as officers, when we say they're yelling on the phone and they're saying domestic, we cannot say, we know what's really happening.
I understand all of that, but I'm also advising you that as somebody who has to take away from Paul to give Peter, I need to understand, and that's what we're here for. And that's why we ask these questions, so we can understand the needs of the department. Because right now, and I'm glad we have these budget hearings, and we call departments in to explain and justify their budget requests, so that we can understand and we know where to cut and how much to cut in order to provide for the needs of others, because that's basically what we're doing with the budget. You mentioned that there is a decrease in criminal offenses
We're talking about,
over the past, let's say, decade. Is that correct? Did I understand that?
I was just mentioning the part when it comes to theft.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Only
the
that.
number, the theft is decreasing, but the domestic is still there. We're slowly trying to decrease the domestic part. So us being vigilant out there is actually helping the numbers from the past to the present. there's a significant change between the past when I first started to now, there's more officers present.
So you're telling this committee that there is a direct correlation between the increased police presence and a decrease of theft? Is that what I'm understanding?
From last year's case to now, yes, there is a significant difference.
Because of increased police clearance?
Yes,
Presence. So absent any statistics to justify that, does DPS keep statistics? You would have to because your grants would require it.
yes.
So that would help us a lot. Yeah. 120,000 for travel. Does this amount, 120,000, also project, let's say, academy that is established during the fiscal year? Because these are just projections.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if you guys, as department heads, do you project these or anticipate these expenses?
We're more like anticipating the expenses.
Okay. But earlier, I didn't hear that from you. You mentioned that when Senator Karina asked about the 120,000 travel, you mentioned that it's sometimes used to transport the
Yes.
the defendant or offender. And of course, that would require a police escort, an individual, right?
Yes.
But I'm wondering if this includes an anticipation of a future academy, because if it is not, you guys are gonna find yourselves in the same hole. Because it wasn't projected in your budget, is what I'm saying. So I hope in the future you guys take that into consideration in your budget request. You or the department, in terms of personnel, wanted to stay at status quo. There's also 2 police officer ones that are vacant going into 2025, is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
So there's 2 police officer ones and 1 police officer 2. So here's another conundrum at least for me. You want to stay at status quo, governor's giving or allocated 47 additional to. I'm anticipating that this committee will take away the 2. Because we have to consider CNMI-wide. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but that's part of our deliberations and discussions. And the reason for that is we also take a look at your vacancies. If you didn't fill it up, it tells us you didn't need it to begin with. Or maybe there was I don't know if you guys announced it and there was no applicants, we don't know. So can you help me understand why there are 3 vacancies moving into 2025?
I just mentioned that to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did request about, but when I saw those numbers, I did request for administrative officer to actually figure out why we got those numbers. According to our admin officer, she has informed me that the reason why those numbers were actually removed, those ones, because OMB removed those money. I'm not sure how, but that's the information I got. So I wanted to open those positions and announce them, but you said those fundings were.
Okay, now I understand. Basically, they took your money, is what.
That's the information I got. That's the only thing I got.
That's what I understand. And if it was budgeted and suddenly there's only $2 in that position, somebody took that money and used it somewhere else. That would have put you at, if those 3 vacancies would have been sustained going into, with the funding that goes with it, moving into 2025 fiscal year, that would have put your police officers, sworn officers, at least at 40.
40.
Yeah, because of the 3 that are vacant. 2 police officer 1s and 1 police officer 2. It's vacant, but there's only $1 and $2 in those positions right now. So that would have put you at 40 sworn officers. So I suggest you travel as opposed to just calling them over the phone to Saipan and find out exactly what's going on with the department's budget, FTEs, and the funding for it. That's all I have for this round. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Balta. Recognize Senator Manil.
Thank you, Chair. I think these guys are really thorough on a lot of the questions. So I'm just going to make a statement. And we spoke about this earlier, about some ideas we need to try and figure out how we can push these shortfalls forward in terms of coming up with the plan in the department. And we were just talking about the registration, and how, again, I'm at fault too, so I'm not trying to pawn that off, but I want to make sure that we do enforce the law, and we don't necessarily have to go around and start citing people, but maybe an idea is do a registration drive and announce it for the next year, and just kind of put a marker on that no later than next fiscal year. We need everybody to try and figure out how to get their vehicles registered, so that we don't see a lot of those unregistered vehicles. Honestly, you still see Guam plates, you still see a lot of off-island plates, and I'm not even sure how that's tracked in terms of communication going to and from your dispatcher on who is it registered to. I'm not sure if you guys have that in the system. I'm sure that poses as a challenge, but maybe an idea is just to come up with a plan, just to the people of Rota for the next year. We're going to start pushing this so that hopefully by the end of 2025, everybody's vehicles is registered, because I understand, again, that the problem is just funding. Not everybody has the means to just go and get their vehicles registered, fuel. And again, that doesn't require DPS to go out there and start driving around. It could be just press release, a constant press release through collaboration with the mayor's office. It's just an idea. I'm just tossing out an idea. And then we were just talking about shortfall on manpower. I know I discussed it with you, and it might not be conducive to your operation, but it's a course of action that you can consider. Is merging the divisions and trying to figure out how we can best utilize everybody's basic knowledge of policing the community into the shifts. For example, you got all these other specific shifts that handles boating and all that. And I understand, again, each section has their specific expertise and is required for that specific section. But maybe it's a team effort where we sit down and figure out how we can merge this and just figure out how we can alleviate overtime. Just some ideas, that we can try and maximize our employees and not violate our work rest cycle and not have personnel burnt because they're just constantly working. I mean, I could imagine just the discussion of 2-man working per shift patrol. I'm not sure if you guys are 12 hours or 24 hours, but that's it's a heavy burden on the peace officers. So, just an idea, something that you guys can sit down and work on. And the last thing we need is, we're just going to come up to a budget hearing and say, we can't do it. We don't want to do it. Or, it's at this time, given the state of the economy and the funding shortage, it's going to be a nightmare for us to just kind of try and deliberate and make sure that we provide the overtime need, the travel needs, and all. It's going to be tough, because again, all we're doing is pulling from Sam and giving Paul, and now we got to identify who's president, right? Who's most important in terms of needing those funds. And again, we're going to try and balance that. I guess the policing of our community is very important. We're not trying to pawn that off on anybody. That's very important for us to ensure that we give the police officers their needs. But it's not going to be the same as 2015 or, and I'm sure you guys will understand that. So I just wanted to make that statement. It's an idea, and anything that will help us, help the municipal government, trying to alleviate some of these costs will greatly help this funding shortfall. So I just wanted to make that statement. and a lot of these, the panel, my fellow senators asked a lot of details, and I see your request, so we will consider that when we deliver. So, again, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Manila. Just some closing questions. Without giving any actual names, I know there's a lease officer, initials KK and GT. Would this be the positions that became vacant, or are they will become vacant?
They will become vacant,
So they're still currently employed?
yes.
Do you know when they're effective?
I don't have the information as their effective date on.
And there's one more, were these the ones counted in the earlier number they gave me of the three that,
No,
so these would be in addition to the three that have resigned?
yes.
Do you know if those three that resigned, have you reviewed the fiscal year 25 revised budget? Have you seen the listings that are on there?
I saw a little of the news when I was talking to the admin officer regarding that.
But do you know if their positions were funded, or are their names still on it for next fiscal year?
No.
No, you're not sure? No, it's not included.
With the one that are planning to exit, that's the one that their positions are still vacant, are still available, but
Right.
the ones that are in the vacant part, those are the officers that I think that moved to Saipan already that were taken away.
Okay. So at least with those two officers that I mentioned, hopefully, once you identify when their last day will be, I highly, again, advise you to move on those funding that will be there come September 30th, at least just to reallocate some of that to support some of your current needs. And then we may, since it's already proposed for next fiscal year, at least you're guaranteed those two slots that you can send off to academy should the Central decide to have one this year. The other three vacant positions, I guess it was left in there in the event that any funds that do become available, maybe whether it be through some grant funding or through an increase in your revolving fund account that could, fund those positions. And so I think, I know, well, Senator Bavata may have mentioned that we may deliberate on taking some of those FTEs out. I think for the purpose of just keeping that spot open in the event federal funding comes in to partially pay some of your officers, that could free up some of the monies that could be used to fund these officers. I know in the past, and I don't see it here now, some of the officers were partially funded through grants. Do you know why those aren't? That isn't the case right now?
Yeah, that's where we have, I was informed about that CJPA had that grant during, I'm sorry, the COVID grant or something like that. That two officer actually paid half federal, half 50-50 from the federal and local. The problem was, one of the officers had resigned before that thing, expired. The other one was, we were given that we have to pay back X amount of dollars because we were not notified at the ending of expiration date or being informed as to the expiration date for this has to be addressed. And for some reason, the officer, we continued being paid through that grant that had expired, and we exceeded the expiration date. And that person has been working overtime, so now we have, I'm mistaken, 30-some thousand to pay back that grant that was used, that overused. So that was where our problem was. We were not informed that, the date of the expiration was coming up to let us give us an ample time to actually start moving that officer to that local no budget.
But who's in charge of that funding?
I'm not sure, I think the CJP or something.
Is Rota DPS still involved or informed of what's going on with CJP?
We were not informed as to the expiration date because that was transitioned from the previous
Right.
director before Director Ed came in play. And
Do we have any representative right now for CJP?
I know they was supposed to be the admin officer is supposed to be addressing that situation. I'm not sure how.
But
What-
isn't there, so this is like a board, right? Do we have a Rota representative on the board? Are you aware?
I know we should have one, I just don't know who is it.
Okay, but the board works closely with DPS, correct? And so if you're not familiar with who the representative are, then maybe that's something that we can recommend, have somebody from Rota represent Rota. Okay, are you familiar with any of the grants that are available? Senator Rota, I'm not sure what the right acronym is, RBS or the voting grant?
And yes, that's with the Coast Guard.
No, the one that, remember the one that, the boats that were used last term, the funding that, do we get some of the funding if you're familiar with that
The
program?
RBS grant?
RBS, is it
The Coast
RBS?
Guard.
The RBS grants?
Yeah, the RBS.
Okay, the RBS grant is, yes, I'm familiar with it, but that Saipan is the one actually, or the one applying for those grants.
So are Rota and Tinian included in those, are you aware if Rota and Tinian are included in the grant application?
I'm not sure.
Do you know if our boats were funded by that RBA grant?
The last visit, I think, is we were given one from under the RBS grant, but that was the tornado, I guess, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Who is the head of the boating safety on Saipan?
Chief Bernard Santos.
Do you know if we get any assistance from?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if our boating
Yes,
safety?
we do get assistance from them. We get fuel in monthly or quarterly, and the assistance with communications.
Okay. Has Fish and Wildlife ever reached out for assistance in patrolling our shores? Yeah. Well, first question is, have they reached out in getting assistance on any illegal activities that may
Yes.
occur in our shores? And are you allowed to, or to assist them in any possible illegal activities within our shores?
Well, when I first started the special operations section, I tried to work with different agencies to tackle numbers of complaints, whether it's criminal cases or which is wildlife cases. So we try to incorporate a task force within ourselves to actually work together to make, to get the resources out. So yes, we have, I'm not, before the commissioner came in, we were allowed to actually assist any department when you request for any of those activities. With now our commissioner right now, there are guidelines on how we actually operate those vessels and when we can operate the vessels. But not to the extent where we cannot operate when it comes to criminal activity or respond to any emergency distress.
Well, the reason I asked that was because earlier when we heard from acting RD Jim Anthony, who's the conservation officer also, one of their biggest challenges is patrolling our shores due to the lack of funding for fuel to go out and investigate any of those activities. So I'm wondering if that's something that if they have to make the request with your office, can you go out and assist
Oh, in the past, yes, we've been doing that. We assist them when it comes to complaints for illegal fishing and stuff like that. But they have their own vessel. The only time we go out to assist them if they have zero funding for fuel to get their vessels out there. So we assist them when it comes to that part. But it only depends on where the fish are and is it necessary for a vessel to go out, or we can just deploy our jet ski to bring the wildlife out there. So,
Well, in the spirit of collaboration, if that's something that you guys are able to assist Fish and Wildlife, because time and time again they bring to our attention the number of activities that are going on up north in regards to illegal fishing, but they're unable to respond due to lack of fuel. And so I'm not, I don't know whether that conversation was ever, if it ever happened with your department to see how you guys can assist and carry out some of their duties. And so, okay. Do you have any concerns in regards to the support that you are getting from SIPA?
do I have any concerns? No, sir.
Yeah. So, Commissioner has been very open to
Yes,
the needs of the department.
with our last conversation with Commissioner Mercado when he came here, and from time to time, he does communicate with us numerous times regarding the needs of what we have, or we need things like that. He's very helpful and instrument in trying to help us with so many stuff, what he can to assist, what he can assist. But he did tell me that when he gets funding and there's ways that he can assist me with fuel or communication, he'll try his very best to actually reach out. So that's a good thing when it comes to the commissioner this time.
Okay. Maybe one more. I just have one more thing I wanted to ask and maybe get your opinion on, whether it be personal or professional. I recently introduced a bill that would allow for UTVs to be used for personal use along the main roads. Is that something that might be a concern, or is that something that you would support, given the economic challenges that we're in, and that maybe the more cost efficient it is to have those vehicles? Do you think that's something that?
In my opinion, personally, it would be great to be used for the purpose of transportation because it helps alleviate, especially on this island, right? Because of the fuel on this island is extremely high, right? But professionally, because it does not worry the DOT, right? It does not have signal lights or that. We can't normally use that in a highway, right? So that's the only two different.
So how do government agencies use it on the highway? Those that come
Normally,
with
they're supposed to,
the signal.
they're supposed to actually get those vehicles on a trailer, bring it to a place where it's not on the highway.
So those don't have signals at all, or?
They have regulations. I'm not sure of the rest of the UTVs that's here, but I know some I've seen that does not have actually signal lights and stuff, so I see them.
I mean, provided that it has like the same specs as maybe a moped or a,
See, with the moped, right, mopeds are actually, they have signal lights and
Right.
all those stuff. UTVs, ATVs are not built for roadside use. It was used more like what do you call that, off-road terrain kind of
Right.
vehicles.
Okay.
If I just may clarify that, I think there's a little bit confusion. So UTV or ATV, as long as it meets the road driving
From what
condition.
I understand, the
For example-
DOT approved, yes.
For example, the brake lights, the signal lights, all of this hazard.
Yeah.
As long as it meets that standard, then in your professional opinion, it can be supported.
I can extend so much more information when it comes to my profession. From what I gathered from the past information that we can't use it unless it's DOT approved or can be certified and have an insurance for it. Because even having insurance for a motorbike here, it takes, if anything less than 50 cc in it, because you have to get insurance. Anything more than 50, you have to get insurance and stuff like that, which a lot of the challenges that we have with big, motorbikes here, they can't no insurance will cover it here on Rota, so I'm not sure if that information changed prior from my previous information I got in the past, so I'm not aware right now.
Okay. So provided it meets safety standards, and that's something that,
Yes.
okay. Please, Senator Miguel.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the discussion about the lapses from the vacancies. And I think not too many people understand that process. And what I can say is that through your analysis on when the employee has resigned to the time that you're submitting, let's say, a reallocation or, moving that from personnel to operation, you can make that request. And for me, I was just looking at a lot of your fuel requests and all of that. One might be a small amount. And I think that if we get with the director and work with the commissioner and go to OMB to make your plea, I think those are something that you guys can just pull back to the department and use it. Because the problem is, what we don't understand is that there's an employee that resigns today, and let's say you hire 3-4 months later, there's that lapse there where that funding is still there, but it's not being utilized. You just have to go back and kind of make that analysis and make that request to OMB. I think the challenge is going to be that I know that all of these vacancies, they're pulling the funding just to reposition them for other needs and stuff like that, given that we've given the governor the reprogramming authority. So I know that now everything they're trying to do is just pulling all these funds just to try and pay all these commitment. But given the nature of you guys' fiduciary duty, your responsibility, you break down this analysis, you look at what's the lapse, and you make this proposal to OMB through your commissioner and make your plea. More than likely, Guasim assistance, it might not be the full, if there's a lapse of 60,000 by the end of the fiscal year. Currently, what you're looking at is you're going to have a lapse of 60,000. You're going to make a plea to try to push those to your operational, so you can use it for fuel or some of your renovations or whatever. You can make those pleas. It's just we need to justify that case. And I know that OMB and Secretary of Finance, they're kind of going on a case-by-case basis, knowing what's most presidents right now, what's most important. Is it an absolute need right now that we push this for whatever you're trying to justify for? So I just wanted to clarify that you can use that. I've done it before, and it helped the department, with some of the shortfall of the funding, because again, these are all just projection, but personnel is always absolute dollar amount that's there.
Yes, I understand that, and
So-
that's why the last knowledge that I know is whenever we have vacant position and we have those are budgeted, that's where we use those lapses are. We actually use those funding to help with the overtime expense and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm only getting, my information that I'm providing to you.
It's based on the information
It's
that was
only
fed.
bits and pieces of information I get here from there. So that's the only thing right now that I'm presenting is what I got from individuals that are supposed to have the knowledge of those information. So when I get bits and pieces of information, and that's what I'm trying to put in this paper and to project out to you, is what only got from them. As far as when it comes to that vacant position, that's where I ask the question is why we have vacant with just $1 on this vacant. It's supposed to be budgeted. Oh, OMB said that they're gonna take the money on this and this and that. It's like, why would they do that? It's just a budgeted account. The fiscal year is not even ending. And we use those to actually augment for those overtimes that we are incurring.
I think it's through the provision of that 100% reprogramming. The governor just has the ability to just, and Guatemala lapse, I'm just going to take it because I need it for this. No. So it's not that they're just taking it because they want it. It's more of right now, again, we're just taking for Sam to pay Peter, and
Yes.
they're trying to make everything work. But it's going to, the important thing is to identify that and, write your justification and make that plea to your commissioner, and your commissioner will be able to support you and push it through OMB and like, look, I know you need this, but can you allow me at least 30,000 of this lapse to pay for my fuel for the remainder of the fiscal year, so I don't keep waiting on the mayor for fuel, that. So that's all of them. That's the only plea that I'm trying to make. And And including the executive branch, the legislative branch, everybody's right now trying to figure out, everybody has their priority. And the challenge is, if it comes to, for example, the police department, fire for that matter, it's an agency that nobody wants to turn a blind eye on. So as long as we make that plea, I think that we can be successful on that. But again, we just have to reach out and constantly follow up on it. So I just wanted to make that statement. And then one more thing, there's been issues of personnel action, and then this is not really on the budget side. There's been issue on personnel actions just disappearing. And I just wanted to ask you personally, is there any gap in the process, or is there any issue in terms of routing and where these documents are missing? Because I know there's a few, not just DPS, but in general, there's a few employees that were promoted or got WGIs in the past, but all the documents is signed, it gets routed, and then the individual don't get this WGI or promotion or whatever. Is there a gap in the routing process? I just wanted to find out, is there an issue that we need to look thoroughly into in terms of making sure that our employees get what they're given, what they're supposed to have? Just wanted to ask that question.
I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I'm captain for a special operation section. I have no knowledge as to those. The best person to actually answer those questions will be the resident director and the administration officer.
Understood. And again, that's why I just wanted to put it on record, because there's been a lot of complaints of this issue, and it's very disheartening para Guam to hear that employees they go through the process of personnel action, sign this stuff, and when it routes, it disappears, and there's no accountability. So I'm raising this issue, and is there something that we need to do to look into this further and try and understand? Because there's a lot of dismay personnel that were expecting this, and there's no explanation as to why this happened. So I think what's important here is to make sure that we can go back to them and say, look, we routed the document, but there's no funds, and that's why it got kicked out, or whatever the explanation may be. But as long as we can go back and make sure we have that communication and there's that understanding between the employer and the employee in terms of the personal action, because again, a lot of times morale is just destroyed as a result of all of these promises. And again, Thiago, I'm not putting this on you. I wanted to ask the question just because I can put this on record, and it's something that we can address, because I've been getting this issue addressed to me directly, and I want to get to the bottom of it. Whether we can fix it now or not, the goal here is to make sure that it doesn't happen to any employee in the future. So I just wanted to ask.
Maybe if you give me funding for travel, I can be on routing it myself. So I'll definitely make sure it goes to the right person.
Well, see, that's not the right answer, because the question is, who is responsible to route this? Who is the individual that has that fiduciary responsibility to route that document? Is that where the gap is at? Is it the receiving entity? Is it the OMB, or is it finance? Where is the gap? That's my concern here, is where's the gap? So even if we let's say we give you funding for travel to go and route it, you go and drop it at, let's say, the first signature OPM, and you drop it there. It's supposed to come back to you, let's say 30 days. What if it doesn't come back? Who's the next? Who do we turn around and ask that question to? Where's the document?
When you look at it, it's like Rota sends the package to Saipan, right? Routing it to Saipan. So the applicant starts from here. The package starts from here. By the time it gets to Saipan, maybe that's where the gap's at.
Exactly, and that's why we're trying to get to the bottom of it, so we can try and make sure we come up with a system where we can fix that.
Maybe we can answer where the gap's at from here.
And I mentioned this because of one thing. The Munis was designed to where the Munis system was designed, and the Sinema government spent so much money on it, was designed to actually route documents digitally, online, so that there is no loss of documents. Literally, to approve a personal action, you just go on I can literally open my phone and just approve the documents. And you can't just make that disappear. But when we go paper, I get the DPS, it might not be DPS, it might not be oil. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of where's that gap so that we can try and close that up and try and fix that so we don't run into this problem. And again, I'm just stressing this from employees that are stressing their dismay, and I want to make sure that I'm here speaking for them. When we drop that package, we got to make sure that at least we have an answer to them. So I want to make sure that I have that answer. And if I don't have the answer, then maybe it's something that we need to look into. So that's it. I just want to make this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Menino. We'll take one more, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one follow-up and one recommendation. So you had mentioned earlier about the overpaid overtime, right? And the reason why that occurred is because you guys were not aware or informed of the expiration date of when the grant would stop funding the person's salary. And so my follow-up question to that is, at which point, like how long did it take whoever informed you guys before that the overtime was overpaid?
I can't remember on top of my head, but I know we had an email from CJP regarding the amount on the extension of that. I think almost a year, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be, because $30,000 in overpayment, overtime would require a long period of time to even get to that point. So, as Senator Dennis is talking earlier about closing some of those gaps, right? There has to be a way that notifications or things like that are done more promptly and timely, and not wait for something to accumulate so much, and that kind of puts a burden on the person. Not to say that, he or she shouldn't pay it back, but there also needs to be some accountability on people who are supposed to do their job, right?
Yes.
So that was my follow-up question. And then just my recommendation is for future budget hearings. As you can tell, we have a lot of questions that requires some type of data or statistics. So my recommendation is to please, start collecting data so that when you come in, and to request for your budget, it's so much easier to substantiate why you need this certain amount, because here's the data to support that. So that's my recommendation for future budget hearings. Thank you, Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Vice. At this time, we would like to thank you, Acting RD Captain Powell, for your time here today and for answering questions you are, you may not be familiar with, but with that, if there's anything that you feel like you would like for us to know that you can get back to us later, please feel free to send that to any of the members here. And also, we would like to, or I guess we'll expect any communications you've had with like OMB or finance to see what challenges you're having in trying to access some of the funds that may be available for you to use before the end of the fiscal year. Additionally, if you know of any plans for an academy, let us know so that we don't take away some of these FTEs that were already included but not funded, just so that we can keep that number in there. Okay, do you have anything else you'd like to close with at this time?
All I'm gonna say is thank you very much for coming, taking your time out. And I know the pot is not high. I understand situations are. The only reason why we're here, I'm here representing the DPS because these are the needs that we were, we're asked that we need for us to actually continue getting the department, moving smoothly and effectively. But all I'm gonna say is thank you for your time and have a safe trip back home.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take a 5-minute recess to allow the next agency to get settled. Hey everyone, we now rise back from recess, and last on our list, we have the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services. We have the Deputy Commissioner here, Mr. Glenn Maratita. The department submitted a budget request of 1.3 million for 29 FTEs. The governor's proposal maintained the 29 FTEs. However, the personnel allocation was reduced, and this is caused by the implementation of the austerity also being applied to firefighters and EMS. And so from the typical over 106 hours, the 10% will be applied to that, so about 10 hours reduction. The department had also requested for 273,000 in operation costs. But as we've seen, none of that was allocated based on the governor's submission. And so at this time, I'd like to recognize the Deputy Commissioner to provide any remarks as well as any narrative that he may have prepared. So at this time, I recognize Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and I also want to welcome the members of this August body, Senator Dan, who's from Rota, Senator Corina Magovnia, and of course, Senator Serena Babauta, welcome, and of course to the Bureau staff and our viewing public. My name is Glenn Maratita. I'm the Resident Deputy Commissioner for Defense Rota, and I like to take this opportunity to also recognize the folks behind the scene that makes things happen at Defense here in Rota. To my immediate right, who's the longest serving member of Defense Rota for about 30 plus years. This is Assistant Fire Chief Ron Ivanogo. And to my immediate left is also Assistant Fire Chief Joe Hokuk, who's been with the department for nearly 2 decades already. And next to his right, Chief Hokuk's right, is Captain Clean Barcinas, my administrative assistant. Next to him is Larry Nathalie, and our EMS supervisor, Firefighter 3 Joe Omar. And next to Director Abby, to her right, is Lieutenant Vic Mindiola. And I guess that's about it. The rest of the crew are either down in Station 7 or up at Station 8. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity. I guess, Mr. Chairman, you're right as far as the number is concerned. And I do want to share that defense in general have 2 revolving fund accounts. Rota, for that matter, we have the ambulance fee revolving fund account, and also we have the fire code. And to date, our fire safety code revolving fund account, we have a balance of about $1,300+. And for ambulance revolving fund account, we have 0. So I hope that it paints a picture as far as where we stand today here at Defense Rota. But then again, I also want to share that we do understand the magnitude we are in as far as the financial situation with the CNMI government. Everybody understands that. That's why we try to think outside the box. We go out and reach other agencies that provide services like the grants and all those kind of stuff. So we reach out to them and we avail to those services, so that we lessen the burden as far as knocking doors to the other agencies, such as, especially here in the municipality, like the mayor's office and so forth. But let me be clear that for the matter, they've been very helpful as far as rendering assistance to us. Other than that, Mr. Chairman and members, we stand ready to take any question and hopefully provide you with the necessary things that you guys are in search for, or we provide you with the accurate information that you guys expected of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, and thank you to your staff that are joining you today, and for those who are currently working out there. Maybe just asking, what are some of how have you managed your operations aside from any assistance you've gotten from the mayor?
We all agree, this is the beauty about, having everybody involved, because at the end of the day, we try to be as conservative as possible. So we kind of like redirect fundings that we have, funding sources, so that we accommodate areas that we perceive as priority 1, 2, and 3.
So when you say redirect funds, are you talking about within your revolving fund, or are you talking about from personnel to operations, or from stipend maybe?
Exactly. As far as reaching out to our central command office, we do that. As far as taking advantage of the, I believe, the revised budget, where it actually opened up that door as far as the utilization of the revolving fund accounts. So we try to maximize in a way, but at the same time, we keep in mind and we're being cognizant as far as the use of those funds. So we try to avail those things by that way.
How much did you have in your revolving fund account prior to the start of the fiscal year, up until your $1,300 plus balance right now?
Yes. So whenever we receive those things, we try, like I said, to go back to the drawing board and identify those areas that needs to be addressed. So we simply stay within the confine of the priorities, and then whatever is left, we look into other areas to accommodate issues that surrounds us.
Right, but how much was in the account at the start?
As far as the number is concerned, I don't have that with me right now, unless Lalin, you have that number? We can provide you that.
Okay, thank you. How much would you say you collect on average monthly from, like, let's just say your fire code?
It varies. It could be somewhere between $800, somewhere between $2,000. It really varies. So it's really difficult to get those numbers before you right now, but I'm certain that we can provide you at a later date, if not today, or maybe later.
Sure, thank you. What about your ambulance fees? You mentioned you had 0. Is that how much you started with, or is that you did have some money there and now that's your balance?
We ended up with 0 because we exhausted it. But as far as going by months, like I said, sometimes I hate to use the word delay as far as being transferred to our sub accounts, but then, man, it's somewhere on top of my head, but I prefer to give you that accurate figure at a later date.
Okay. Are these, so in regards to the ambulance fees, does Rota or even Tinian get a percentage of total ambulance fees collected, or is it just what is collected for Rota?
It's whatever that we submitted for billings is what we get back.
So only whatever is collected on Rota is how much you'll be able to use.
Exactly.
Do you know if you are owed anything after you've collected and you have yet to get that allotment? Are you owed any of those ambulance fees?
I don't think it's been owed. It's just a process. Whether they try to expedite that process or it stays with, other agencies that are involved in the process. But again, we do our due diligence by calling them, reminding them, and
Right.
see if we can get that.
I understand that, but so then if it's not owed, how much would you say you are waiting on for those monies to be remitted over?
I'm lost on that because honestly, we may see the figure today, tomorrow it may change. So, I think it's leading more towards pointing finger, and I don't want to do that. But that's just a simple fact that that's where we stand today. So whether we collect this amount or that amount, at the end of the day, we expected this amount to be here. But then again, it may change. How it changes, I have no idea.
Right. And so herein lies the issue, right? And that's why we're here to listen out and see how we can interject and see how we can get those monies out to you, because the point of suspending, the limitations on these revolving fund is meant for your agencies to operate with. And so if you're not getting that money, then, who do we need to talk to get that money over to you guys?
Well,
So is it central defense stipend? Is it finance? I mean, who would be the best, which would be the best agency to speak to in regards to that?
I would appreciate that, and I think you outlined the agencies that are involved, so maybe it's a good start.
Okay. But as far as accounting wise, you don't know how much that is, based on what you submitted for payment.
We can't provide you with the accurate number.
All right, thank you. I see that you also have vacant positions that aren't funded, but do you know if there are any plans for an academy?
Nope, not at the moment.
Okay. Have you received do you have any challenges in getting any support from Commissioner Pua or Central?
Not at all. They've been very instrumental. We get tons of support coming out of the central office, so it really is a factor as far as getting us to move on, keep the ball rolling on our end.
Okay. Now I see two vacant positions that are not funded. Do you have any more positions that became vacant during the fiscal year?
Aside from the two that we had, I believe one already submitted his resignation, so that will equate to about 3 numbers of FTEs.
The two vacant these were never even filled from the beginning, correct?
Come again, Congressman, Senator.
The two vacant right now that aren't funded, those were never filled even at the start of the fiscal year, is that correct? Or did they become vacant within the fiscal year?
We actually submitted, we went through the process, having to work. In fact, one of those vacancies is actually being announced. Papers have been routed, but it's just unfortunate. The timing is, I guess, not good at all, because it's the budget season and it's been zero, despite the fact that we've already interviewed our potential candidate for the position, but we had to put it on hold because of the situation right now with the proposal from the governor.
Okay. Based on your current personnel, are you incurring any overtime costs?
Yes, we do.
Is that a recurring cost? Is that consistent or based on what activities are there happening within the community?
Activity that surrounds us, and again, by virtue of regulations and whatnot, those are the things that we keep in mind, and then we try to stay within the confine of those regulations. And if it calls for that, we need to put people in to cover shifts. We do that. We do exactly that, just to make certain that we don't leave the shifts behind with a shortage of manpower and so forth.
Okay. But assuming that no one calls in sick, there's no events happening that may require EMS services, just a normal 2-week pay period. Are you still incurring overtime within that period based on how you assign personnel?
I guess we do, because of those requirements.
Do you know what the average is of overtime costs incurred every pay period?
I can safely say that the last pay period that I signed off, we accumulated over 100+ hours of overtime.
And that's without anyone who were out sick. That's without anyone calling in sick, meaning if somebody calls in sick, you call in somebody to cover, and like what we've heard with DPS. I mean,
It's just simply short of manpower.
okay, so how many would you need to cover down on these hours so that we don't incur overtime?
If we get those FTEs, those vacant positions up in place, we'll probably not eliminate, but for certainly would adjust and reduce that overtime costs.
So what would be that number to eliminate overtime costs? So you have your 3 plus how many more?
Let me give my time to my operations supervisor. He's the man, he knows these things like the back of his hand, so I'd like to give him that opportunity.
So basically, the question was, sorry?
So in addition to filling up this 3 vacancies, how many more firefighters or EMTs will you need to eliminate overtime costs?
It's basically we probably need like 6 more FTEs.
And have you identified how that would look like with the austerity measures in place and how much more you would need just to cover for the reduction in hours of the entire department?
Just basically, we wanted to have an efficient running crew. I would say it'll really take up the overtime.
Okay. Is the Sen station a fully functioning station?
No, it's not, Senator Chairman.
Was there a change in initiative or a lack of manpower? What is the issue, or how can we get that to become a fully manned and fully operable station?
Multiple issues at hand. We do want to improve the facility by having to construct, at a minimum, a concrete structure that would provide a permanent housing for an ambulance and a fire truck. But then again, excuse me, there is more issue behind that than just funding sources to improve the facility. We also have issues that relates to land encroachment and having it to commission by meeting those standards and so forth. But again, I just have to raise that issue as far as land encroachment is concerned. So it kind of put a screeching halt to those proposals, because now it's really uncertain for us whether or not it's a permanent facility or not. So again, we went the extra mile by having to consult with DPL to see if we can be given, or at least on a conditional deed, a property somewhere in Sinopolo so that we reposition our station and take it from there.
Okay, so even if you were to kind of use the current location, but maybe shift into areas that are public lands to build a permanent structure, is there an issue there? Like maybe more towards the court side, or I don't know.
You know, I don't have the complete information, and I hate to mention this because it really became a second-hand or even a third-hand information that I'm receiving, and I don't know if you're going to honor that or whatnot. But from what I received, that there is actually a plan years ago to avail a funding source under the 702 that will provide the perspective to build the fire station here in Sinopolo. And of course, you mentioned that the proposal was to designate that open lot right here next to the court. But again, things change. DPO decided to give a conditional or a temporary deed to the municipality for another purpose. So it's like, you know, having to start all over again and see where it's ideal, conducive that we place a permanent fire station up in Sinopolo.
So your current location is really not feasible at this point, even to expand to the public land parts of your current location to get rid of the encroachment issue and not deal with that issue? I mean,
If it can be resolved, really, that would be wonderful. But it's really off my hand. Those are the things that is really beyond my control.
right. Well, maybe it's just more of an understanding of what issues there are so that we can, but even if we were to consider, say, the expanding into the public land part of your current location, how much are you looking at to build that permanent structure?
I don't have that figure right now. I don't know.
Okay. I know in the past, DFMs have been recipients of CBDG grant, like for a fire truck, I think, right? Are there any other grant opportunities from CBDG that maybe DFMs can avail of?
So we actually just received, I think about 2 weeks ago, one of the side-by-side, which is a UTV. It's a smaller scale vehicle that will really get us to where we need to be as far as grass fires is concerned. And we also have a jet ski, a rescue jet ski on hand under the CDBG.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. At this time, I'll allow for other members to ask questions. Recognize Senator Mendiola.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get back to the encroachment issue. Is the encroachment issue preventing defense from occupying them and actually performing its responsibility?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm kind of lost on that first phrase of your question.
The encroachment issue that you had mentioned earlier, is that preventing you from actually occupying the station?
Not at all, not at all. But these are issues that we really need to be concerned of, because if we put a lot of investment to that area.
I understand that, Director. The only reason why I'm asking is because the initial question is whether it's operational servicing the Sen FA. So the reason why I'm asking if the encroachment issue is preventing you guys from actually operating out of Sen FA, that priority now becomes precedence, and now the delegation can probably approach the DPO director. Because I know there's been discussion about the encroachment issue, and it was supposedly resolved, but apparently I'm hearing that it's not. So that's why I believe the chairman is asking what's really the issue and how can we try and mitigate that and make sure that we don't lose that investment in that facility.
And that's why I also mentioned that my source of information became probably second and third hand information, and you know best because you said it's been resolved. I don't even know about that. And I cannot guarantee anything coming out of my mouth. If as the chairman is asking what's the holdup or what's preventing us from investing in that area, my concern is that we're dealing with taxpayers' dollars here. And we cannot continue to do these things without first identifying and resolving this issue, and then we move forward.
Well,
And then that's how we're gonna get it to be commissioned, so that we occupy that as an actual fire station.
well, therein lies the problem is that you cannot guarantee the information. So what is the course of action from that statement right there? What is the next course of, so if we have an issue, what is our next course of action to actually resolve that issue, to make the information clear and so that we know what's the next course of action?
We've been knocking doors, and I'm glad that we're pointing this out right now.
And that's why you mentioned this earlier, that you don't want to point fingers, but the problem is that this is not necessarily pointing fingers. This is actually to get to the bottom of it so that we can fix it. And I'm gonna speak on the revolving funds, but if the issue lies that we're not addressing it, then it becomes just a sitting duck there. And the last thing we want is to continue to invest in it, and we cannot move forward in actually occupying it as the emergency station servicing the community of Sen FA. So, and again, this issue is, I'm going to say in a it's close to heart because it's one of the actual legwork that we've done. And I refuse to just sit here and just say the information that you're getting is third hand, second hand, first. It's hearsay. Problem is that maybe the course of action is let's go and find out what's really the truth behind it. Because I'm not sure if you guys are aware that there's an actual MOU behind that, the fire got for that. And then there's also communication between the encroachee and fire. So there is information behind that, and it's something that we need to get to the bottom of. And the reason why, again, I'm asking about this is because the majority of the populations in San Paulo, the whole intent for us to create that substation or that station is to make sure that we service the general public. Because if we look at response time, if we have to respond from the village coming up to San Paulo and then back down, but if we can cut that in half and start from San Paulo and go to the hospital, that just makes our emergency response a little bit more faster, and it helps our community. So I just wanted to point that out. That's not really a question, Director. The next one is revolving funds. Every quarter, you guys are supposed to get a revolving fund, EMS funding source. And if you guys are not getting that, maybe it's something that we need to point out so that we can actually ask this when it comes down to Fire Central, and ask what's the gap. Again, this is not to point fingers at Central Fire, but maybe it's an issue of, I don't know if you guys are tracking, but Medicaid is not paying as fast as they used to. The bond is short. So, but we want to make sure that we address those issues. I can tell you that on average, Defense Rota gets roughly about $8,000 on EMS revolving funds. And if you guys are getting short that's something that we need to address directly on average. And the whole process with that is really just EMS office identifying the funds, and then the commissioner signing the transfer and sending it over to Secretary of Finance to switch the account from Central Fire to Municipal Fire. So I want to make sure that we address that as well. That's it for now. I'll just wait for the statement.
Thank you, Senator Medina. Recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, Defense. Staying on the same topic on the revolving fund account, I just would like to understand, obviously there's a delay in processing payments, and I would like to know how long is the delay?
Difficult to answer that question, hard to tell.
So when you submit your invoice for payment, let's say this week, does it take 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months before you can actually see the payment? And the reason why I'm asking about the turnaround time of these payments is to really, as Senator Dennis said, get to the bottom of it and understand where the gaps are and the bottleneck, right? This is not about pointing fingers. It's about addressing the issue that creates more issues on top of it. And because this is a revolving fund account and the department relies on these funds to use for operation, it is important that these payments are paid out timely. I understand that there are some circumstances that may affect the processing time, but there has to be a realistic and reasonable time in processing this payment. So if it's taking too long, I don't know what's considered too long, and this is something that I would definitely ask. This is when we identify where the bottlenecks are. What does their SOP say as far as, when invoices are received and they go through the process? there has to be a standard, there has to be a system in place that talks about the processing time. Sure, there's gonna be some delays sometimes, but what is considered reasonable?
I would say from the minute that it was deposited, certified, it will be ideal that we get that thing out of maybe less than a week.
Okay,
But then again, we're doing our due diligence by picking up the phone, making that phone call, because we know for a fact that, for lack of a better word, those folks that were providing the bills, right, the billings, would submit their payments and then, they take it from there. But then again, I like to remind that, this August body that we're also doing our due diligence,
Sure,
making that
no.
phone call. But as far as time frame is concerned, I'm not even aware if there's an SOP behind that. So thank you for pointing that out.
I
and
mean,
maybe I'm just
I
gonna-
would think
Yeah.
that there's an SOP, especially
Yeah.
for a department as big as
Yeah.
yours.
And I hate to throw my guys under the bus, and I will never do that, but I was just asking one of the chiefs here, is there an SOP behind these things, and what is it? We've been doing meeting weekly. That is our style, so that we keep abreast on what's happening, with us, being transparent, but I'm not aware, Senator, and I apologize.
I'm just
for
trying to
not providing
understand the
that answer.
workflow, right? So from when it leaves Rota and it gets submitted to the central office for processing, I guess that's where I'm going with this. Like, when it leaves Rota, I'm sure you guys do your due diligence, but when it leaves Rota and it gets to the next place for processing, what is the average time that it normally takes them to pay on those invoices?
Spare me a second with that. Let me get you the right person to
Okay.
respond to this, all right?
Thank you. Please know we're just here trying to understand what the process is and if we could be of any assistance, in helping to expedite, some of these issues that affect you guys, that's what we're here to do. So, and because we will be holding budget hearings with other departments and this is a great opportunity to help us understand what are some of the challenges that Rota is facing, so that when we meet with those departments back home, we can ask them. It's just a dialogue. Nobody's getting in trouble. We're just here to understand and identify what those root causes are, so that we can help resolve them and help each other.
Good afternoon. So my name is Joseph Omar, EMS rep for Defense Rota. So just to answer to the best of my knowledge regarding the EMS billing. So with the EMS billing, by the time the guys submitted their EPCR,
You guys, as in here in Rota?
when we get it run, we get the billing through the EPCR. From there, we send it off to Saipan.
Okay,
So from Saipan office, you gather all the runs together with probably Saipan down for the month, send it off to the biller. So with regards to the question of the time frame, I'm really not sure, or I don't have the answer for that, but
I mean, in your experience, what has been the average turnaround time for receiving payments on those billings?
I cannot answer that, ma'am. Like I said, all we do is we send off the runs up to Saipan. Saipan get their section there where they get the bills, send it off to the biller, which is,
So by the time finance or treasury disperses the payment, from the time you guys submit, let's say today's date, today is the 25th. And by the time you guys see the deposit into your account, what does that look like? How many, is it days, weeks, months? On the average, based on
I'd say
prior
maybe 2 weeks,
2 weeks.
2 weeks to a month at least.
So that you would say that 2 weeks is the average turnaround time for Defense Rota to receive the payments, okay? And you kind of already outlined the process, right? The workflow from when it leaves Rota to all the different places that it gets routed for review and approval and all that, and then the disbursement.
Yes.
Okay. And then, okay, and so that takes care of my question, and I'm just concerned because, you know, it shows like for your ambulance fees account, it's 0. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, you guys provide some ambulance service on a monthly basis, so this account should never be 0 unless you guys just deplete all the funds in there, you know. I mean, I don't know, so, but it's concerning that it's 0. Especially because you guys rely on that to use for operations. And then the next thing that I want to touch on is you had mentioned that the numbers today may be different or change tomorrow. I don't understand what you mean by that.
Neither do I. Can you refresh my memory as far as the numbers changed in regards to what?
I didn't really catch what you were saying earlier, but I just heard the last part of it as that you're saying, like, you know, it really depends. I mean, the number today may change or may change tomorrow, and I didn't catch the context of that statement that you may have made earlier. So I'm trying to get more clarification on that.
Mr. Chairman, can you refresh my memory? Was that you, Senator Mendiola?
Point of clarification, Mr. Chair, if I may. I think the statement, and I'll help you refresh your memory, I guess. So this is talking about depositing the EMS fee into the account. So what you were alluding to is that the amount that you review today can be different tomorrow. And I can also answer that. So I can also answer that. A lot of times when that funding goes in, although it's a revolving fund specifically for the fire service, sometimes the Secretary of Finance actually pulls funding from that, and it doesn't reflect the actual amount that was reviewed prior. So I just want to help clarify that. And then also, and this is through experience, you know, a lot of times that whatever we calculate for the EMS service, whatever is calculated for the EMS service to receive is not necessarily the amount in the account. And that's due to many variables, to include some patients are paying out of pocket and they can't pay it. So it's just reflecting an amount, but it's not necessarily paid for. There's also Medicaid. Sometimes Medicaid, it's showing the amount that this is what we're supposed to have, but Medicaid has not transmitted that funding to the local government. So those are the actual reasons why sometimes the funding, we see this number today and tomorrow it may change or it might decrease. So I just wanted to help clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Senator. I guess my next follow-up question to that is there somebody that's actually monitoring, tracking, and reconciling what was actually billed versus what's actually paid, and then what the remaining balance is still owed to defense?
So it's actually the central office who is responsible to monitor those activities.
Okay, so but Rota doesn't keep track of it independently from central, just in case? You know, you always want to keep your own records, right? You don't always want to 100% rely on somebody else to tell you what is owed to you. I understand that, you know, the amount that shows on your end may not be exactly what's in the account, because maybe, as Senator Dennis had explained earlier, some of them may not be considered valid or allowable. So that's, that's one of the factors that could be affecting the numbers. But as far as, the amounts to be deposited in the account, I mean, I would think that you guys want to keep track of what should be coming to you and not solely rely on others to tell you, because you just kind of have to look out for yourselves, Otherwise, if you leave that responsibility on someone else to keep track of everything that's owed to you, you may never see those amounts. So just a recommendation, going forward. Yes.
I'm sorry, and I apologize, I kind of generalized that, but we do monitor that according to Chief
Oh,
Hope.
okay.
All right, so I'm sorry.
That's good to know. Yes, you should always keep an independent record of what's owed to you, especially what's owed to you. Okay. Yes.
Let me just help out again. Point of clarification, that's what the APCR is for. The whole breakdown is already in the APCR system where you can actually pull those up. So just to help the team out.
Okay, thank you for that clarification again, Senator. Next is on the overtime. So, obviously, overtime is occurring regularly, right? According to the statement made earlier. But I see that on the budget request itself that was submitted to the governor's office, it was 0. So I guess my first question is, currently in this fiscal year, what is the funding source for overtime?
That proposal, if I may start or begin with that proposal that you just mentioned about having to request a 0 overtime. Madam Senator, we did submit an amended, what you call it, submission to attach to our original submission. And then that's when we submit the request for overtime expenditure. It was inadvertent, it was misconstrued by my staff. But then we managed to correct that, and we were glad that it was entertained by the executive. So anyhow, we look into our accounts, and if we identify funding source that's coming up from personnel lapse from personnel account, we utilize that to accommodate those things.
Okay. So you're referring to how it's being addressed currently, right? This fiscal year, the funding source for your overtime expenses is coming from lapses from whichever expenditure line item is. So that's how you're funding it right now. But I'm asking for FY25, the budget request from your department is 0. Allocation from the governor is 0, but it's clear that, you guys do incur overtime regularly. So I guess my question is, what funding source will you guys be using to pay for the overtime? Will you continue to look for monies in areas that are lapsing, and then hoping to find some money there and then pay your overtime? I mean, there has to be a more secured funding source for overtime, because it's not something that you could just well, we don't have the money right now, so we can't pay for your, the overtime that you've already incurred. It's a bad business practice, and it's illegal actually, right? So I'm trying to understand what's, there has to be a more guaranteed source to be able to. I'm not saying don't incur the overtime, because obviously it's needed, right? But I also want to make sure that the personnel, the staff, that they don't have to worry about working overtime and not getting paid. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to their families, So I'm just trying to understand, where is the department going to get the funding to pay for overtime if 0 was requested and the governor didn't allocate any money?
Wonderful question that you asked. So, again, we're gonna have to scrape the bottom of the barrel with whatever resources that we have. Anything beyond that, I think it's a liability for the department, or, in other words, we're gonna incur deficit.
Okay. Okay. Do you guys sometimes ask central office for assistance when it comes to payroll related expenses, or is that something that you guys go to the mayor for, or? And this is the whole reason why we're here in the budget hearing, right? Is to understand what the needs are and to ensure that, we are not putting your department in such a predicament that it would get to liability. Like we don't even have money to go to incur liabilities like that, So we're trying to be proactive. We're trying to prevent and avoid any unnecessary liabilities from occurring. And this is part of the process, during the budget hearing so that we can understand what those needs are.
So please help us and give us the 100,000 that we're requesting.
And so we are requesting 100,000 for overtime? Is that what you're?
I believe that's what we submitted.
We're showing zero.
Like I pointed out earlier, I believe I mentioned that we submitted an amended.
So you submitted a
And
revised
I'm-
budget okay, so it wasn't reflected then in the governor's proposal.
All right, so,
So, okay, and the 100,000, can you give us a copy of what the revised budget that was submitted to OMB? And then also, you're asking 100,000 for overtime. What data or reports do you have to substantiate that 100,000 is what you need for overtime?
Yeah, you can provide it at a later time.
Yeah.
If you don't have it with you.
Okay.
we'll do.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I'm done with the personnel stuff. I'm down to travel. You were requesting for $70,000, and my question is, does the $70,000 include training expenses and stuff like that, or is it just strictly travel? And if it is strictly travel, where are we traveling and who's going and stuff like that? And I'm asking whether or not training is included in the travel for the 70,000, because if I don't see any budget request for personnel training costs. So sometimes in our experience, we learn that, the training expenses is included in the travel line item. So I'm just trying to understand what the 70,000 consists of.
Primarily, that's the request that we requested upon because of the multitude of certifications that my staff needs to undergo. So the 70,000 that we're requesting actually is mirrored towards training and recertifications. Yeah.
Okay, and that's why I asked, because under training costs and licenses and fees, which would include certifications, those were, there's nothing in there, it's zero. And so for future reference, right, let's try to itemize them out and not try to lock them all into one. So it's easier for us when we're looking at the budget to understand that, yes, you're asking for travel, but it's substantiated by the training costs and, the certifications. I'm sure you guys are required and mandated to receive, to go through some certifications annually. And so we would really like to see those numbers on there, so that we can properly fund those expenses, and then I'm assuming your utilities will be paid by the mayor?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chair. I yield.
Thank you. I recognize Senator Bacal.
Cesar Swanson, Chairman. Buenas tardes, Mr. Latita. Extensive questions have been asked about overtime. How much overtime did Defense Rota incur last year? This is to help us understand the request of 100,000 for this fiscal year.
Give me a second here, Senator.
Sure. And also to follow that up, how much overtime has been incurred to date this fiscal year? If you have those numbers. Estimated figures are okay. We don't have to have exact.
We were discussing that earlier, but I don't know how it disappeared on my folder as far as last year is concerned, but
Do you
today,
recall off the top of your head? Maybe?
Jesus Christ, that I can tell you. But year to date, we incurred about somewhere between 33 and 36,000 already. So
Let me try and help you. According to,
Madam Chair, if I may. I'm sorry. Okay, so we located the file, so our record here shows that from October 2023 to June 26 at least, we incurred about 23,000 plus of overtime expenditure.
that's
And
for overtime, right?
overtime, yeah, correct. Yep.
There appears to be some discrepancy in the numbers we're getting from finance. And perhaps it's a reporting issue, or it could be the migration from JD Edwards financial system to the Munis, because that was the year it went live, so, but according to our records, we have 7,490 for 2023, the actual expenditure, 7,000. In 2022, Defense Rota incurred 10,065 in overtime costs. And now you're asking us for 100,000, so, and currently you are projected to incur, on average, you're incurring 3,666 based on your actual expended, cost this fiscal year. So you are projected to incur an additional 3,666 for the next 3 months per quarter. That's how much you are, on average, incurring in overtime costs, which would increase your overtime costs this fiscal year by 3,600, so roughly about 37,000. Go ahead.
The number may be that low, Madam Chair, and of course, I do want to put this on record also that, in many situations here, especially here in Rota, where we lack the manpower to cover the shortfall on any shifts, we have defense personnel, more than half of them that would actually come and assume duty at a compensatory rate, as opposed to overtime. And this is voluntary. There is nothing written that from at least the superior officers that requires them to fill those open slots on a compensatory basis, but I guess because the passion of the job, They do want to come in and make certain that they cover the shift and they would agree to come time. But it took its toll. So now, we were going back to, the overtime expenditures.
Help me understand, how many firefighters do you have currently? Is it 25? That's what I count.
We have we have about 22 right now.
Oh, so some of these resigned or?
22. So it's 24 in total, but we have 2 that resigned. So we're
And
down
one
to
vacancy
22.
then? There's 25 in the FY 2024 budget that is.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So there's actually 25, but
Okay.
3 resigned.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, besides the administrative services personnel, we have a 25 full
And
blown
those are only firefighters, not EMS personnel?
combined
Combined.
firefighter
So
EMTs.
your firefighters are cross-trained in EMS?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you mentioned that you recently signed off the latest pay period of at least 100 hours of overtime for your personnel. Did I hear that correctly?
I believe so, yes. I can
So-
sign off on 100 plus.
My question then is, how many fire incidents does defense resolve? 1 month will always be different than the next. So how many fire calls does defense respond to in a given month on average?
I cannot provide you with the monthly basis at this time, but I can provide you from October to present. All right, so for emergency response calls, we had about 58 calls.
58?
Yes, ma'am. Non-emergency, we had like 51. And then, of course, we do have calls, patient refusals and cancellations, and, for a total of about 124.
So those are calls that defense responded to, but for some reason, the individual declined transportation, let's say to the health center for whatever reason. Is that correct?
That's correct. When we take the initial call and they requested for that assistance, in some cases, my guys will respond to that given situation, but then, after assessments and whatnot, sometimes these victims or patients will refuse the services that would, the transport services, then they prefer to, be on their vehicles and whatnot. So it's rounds that case.
Okay, so based on those figures, average, or actually those are actual figures, right? That you have kept data on, the responses? 51 for non-emergencies and 58 for emergencies, and then 124 who, for some reason, they declined transportation. So a total of,
Actually, it's 124 in total, but I was
Oh, okay.
referring to the refusal at 14.
14, so
And,
124,
cancellation en route at 1. So it amounts to about 124 calls.
124 from October to present. Responses.
Correct.
That's an average response of 13.7 per month. So help me understand the 100,000 justification for overtime with responses of only 13 on average per month.
I'm going to try and generalize, but I
Sure.
would yield my time to Chief Focal so that he explains further, because he's the chief for operations and he understands well how we operate here. But normally, on a shift, a single shift would consist of 7 personnel, and anything below that would really hurt our operation, because we have the ambulance to be operated, and we have the engine, the fire trucks that needs to be operated as well. So if both were to simultaneously roll out from our bay, the ambulance itself normally is equipped with 3 personnel, and the engine would also be equipped with 3 personnel, leaving 1 personnel to monitor
The
the
dispatch.
line.
Yeah.
So we try to stay within that area. And then for reason why we have that number, Chief may explain that pretty much well to you. So I'm gonna use my time if you
And
wish
how
to chime
many
in.
shifts are there in a 24-hour? Because I know defense is a 24-hour operation here too, right?
Yes.
So how many shifts in a 24-hour period?
We got 3 shifts.
So 8, 16, 24, average of 8 hours per shift.
Yes, madam, but basically what we're referring here is not the run numbers or what, it's just filling in the gap to man the stations.
I'm sorry, coming in?
It's just a matter of filling in the crew members.
Yes, I understand that an engine requires a minimum number of personnel because somebody has to operate the hose in the event, somebody has to drive, of course, I understand all of that. And I do believe it is undermanned. Given the requirement, federal requirement that an engine requires, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a minimum of 6 or 7. But I just wanted to understand, this is why we ask these questions with respect to overtime, because overtime is very expensive for the government. Not only do you pay the individual, the employee, time and a half or 2, there's also the fringe benefits that are, of course, tacked on to those expenses. So that's why we were trying to understand how many shifts, how many individuals per shift, how many responses. These are data that we need to be informed on to understand better your needs. And now I can see and understand that there is a shortage with 24 firefighters working 24 hours a day. That is your entire department working every single day, 7 hours or 8 hours a day, and of course, overtime when somebody calls it sick. I still have an issue with the numbers, the 100,000, but if we can properly calculate that and come up with an average, perhaps that is agreeable to both the defense and for budgeting purposes. We will try and deliberate that further when we meet informally. So thank you. Fuel cost. Defense is requesting $60,000. In your amended submission, is that still the same number? 60,000 for fuel? Is that the same request? It didn't change in your amended submission? Should be, right? Okay, your fuel costs based on actual expenditures, figures that we got from finance has tripled over the last 3 years. Tripled. Can you help us understand why?
Well, I based that figure, like I said, from the operations and what we've experienced from, or at least they experienced from the past, that in many response or anticipated response that they are required would get them in a position where they have to go out there and knock on doors on other agencies to accommodate them with that. But I leave it as it is. The 60,000 that we're asking is based on their assessment at 5,000, I believe, per month. So it is something that we see ideal for them, but not necessarily that we exhaust the 5,000. Whatever's left goes back to the coffer. But at least we know and we're certain that we have the amount in place that will really carry us to do what we need to do. And again, like I said, that is something that not necessarily mean that, we're over the, we're setting a cap, but at least it is something that figuratively speaking, it's in our account that, again, is readily available when, in times of need arises.
Understood. Understood, and it makes sense if you break it down by monthly expenses. I'm concerned a little bit about your request for 70,000 in travel versus your training expense, which is, according to your request, is yeah. So can you help me understand the 70,000 in requested travel versus zero in training? What is this travel for?
Versus zero inquiry?
Training.
Ma'am,
You didn't request for it?
yeah, so,
Or is it in the amended?
apa tu?
Okay. Kau gaji igini je namin ni.
Yeah.
Kau gaji waktu no zatai gini gi papel mo bisa.
Karang tagano na sitwasyon.
Okay, understood. Lo afan yung nisita no travel expenses?
Tayo mano azo na sangangan ni si Senator Corina na laji na salapi i fafaisin i members i estibandan i certifications and recertification na i deposi no inobliga
Yeah.
i tautomome na no debut matsuli sa rason na sinya manenay na no nafatsa pumatsogi tsetsunya sangkin tisinya no matsuli i training postada palinya i-approve na ST pag-certify i EMT na
EMT, yes.
sangkin ti ma-certify
Panangkadasakan.
tisinya ya enggan Zapos sangkin ti ma-certify o to recertify o gini EMT na tawag business mo gambulan push you became useless gi department. Izuna, we try to make certain their trainings or the recertifications are up to par so that we maximize this personnel,
Mano usually matsali certification ni EMT?
Depende. Wana pen ang patatang cost contamination idea wana manono moki
Okay.
na matsogi gini o sino wana pen ite available galog ita gini ke Marianas pues debia affects sa para talagang saruf na Marianas na pues wana pen ita society no siya no antes de tafati tinaseno desisyon niya na sige nataatan o beneficio zi tanong moki versus isi patanauzo. So in many cases, again, it really depends on the training. So we have specialized trainings, we have recertifications, and so forth.
Sa izin mizo equipment ni firefighters, Monica todo? In terms of izin mizo personal protective gear, whatever it is you use?
What's yan apparatuses na? I would not say obsolete, no, ista matutempo niya na para matulay.
No,
Pues, no.
kanan nakusa na saktan ng tilatsi so i-defense center. Manafan nuevo equipment niya, ko man mires luta defense nito.
Manggif maulik na tawtawis sa man mas extended no siya mo.
Lo kabalis na sufficiente para departamento.
Wakazi suficiente, waziti suficiente po sa obligang papel na suficiente.
Comprende. Okay, since pasay.
Thank you. Recognize the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just have some follow-up. So, gat malago na biadudan to manasiguro na siya i-recertifications and masya often na classroom requirement ni Debbie Perensegui, ni Pinsobi Tsetsumizu na in comprende ja in tumo often necessidad mizu ang quanto puro ginasta. So, we can start with the recertifications. No, is this annually? annually, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but ¿cuánto na cost recertification in necesita?
Nazo un minuto para más. La pena fanda necesidad uno.
Okay, I guess my objective here is to itemize all the different certifications and recertifications and whatever licenses that you guys have, itemize them out, multiply them by the number of staff that you have that are required to receive these certifications and what the average cost normally is, right? So that we can truly understand how much the cost is that defense needs in order to ensure that its entire personnel meets those requirements. So that's my objective, and we don't have to, calculate all of that right now. It would greatly help us when we deliberate if we can get those information to ensure that Rota gets at least that funding for you guys to get the certifications and recertifications and whatever else you guys need.
And I appreciate that because I never expected it that it's going to come this detail. If I would have expected it from the very beginning, I would have furnished you with all the
Okay,
requests
so
that you
maybe,
may have.
in retrospect,
But
going
right now,
forward,
it's more like
you-
generalizing it.
it would greatly help us if we could itemize those things out, especially when it comes to travel and training and certification. List all of those things out and help us understand, what those trainings are, what those certifications are, and how many people need to have that, and what is the average cost based on prior expenses. Because when we see all of that and it's justified, it makes it so much easier, and we don't have to sit here for the last couple of hours, maybe, trying to understand that. So for future reference and, budget hearings, it would greatly help us if we can itemize these things out so that once we see it, and a narrative would be great, to be submitted to this body so that we can read them ahead of time and understand what the requests are. Okay, and then that way when we come here, it's just a matter of maybe, some clarification that may not have been clear to us, or, just, and also just to note that a lot of times we look at what the prior expenditures were for the prior year, and that kind of helps us gauge, this is why we asked the question, well, last year you only spent 30,000 for overtime, but this year you're requesting overtime, 100,000 for overtime, and it doesn't mean that it's not justified. It's just that we need to understand what caused the increase from 30,000 to 100,000, so that we can, we can understand, right? And when it comes to deliberation, we can prioritize what those needs are, and safety is a number one priority on everyone's list. So if, it's important that you guys get the budget that you guys are asking for, but it needs to be clearly defined and have some kind of supporting documents or data to substantiate those requests, because that would greatly help us move along with the process.
I appreciate the lecture, Senator. Duly noted.
Okay, that's all I have, Chair.
Thank you, Vice. Just some closing questions. I know your request for certification is lumped into what you're proposing for travel for next fiscal year, but in the current fiscal year, how have you managed with recertification of your EMTs?
That's where we start knocking doors. When we feel the shortage, that's when we go up to site and we ask them for, their assistance. And they've been truly instrumental when it comes to those kind of things, because they never say no, because they understand the magnitude to why these things are very important. And like I pointed out earlier, an EMT recertification in itself, if this personnel fails that certification or even did not show up for this certification, for lack of a better word, they become useless for the department. So we try to make certain that, they're up to all these things. So if you're asking for, like that, then yeah, I'm glad that our central command is also providing that assistance.
Okay, so there's no issue there with getting them certified right now?
Come again?
There's no issues there with getting them recertified, like in the current fiscal year.
There are issues, but we try to solve those problems internally.
What about the jet skis? From my understanding, you are in possession of jet skis. Do those need certification as well?
Chairman, come again?
Is the department in possession of jet skis as an emergency?
It actually came in like, it was here 2 weeks ago, together with the side-by-side. It's a UTV.
Where were these funded from?
Under NMHC, and I believe it falls under CDBG, I believe.
Okay. Is there a certification requirement for operating jet skis to be used as a response vehicle?
Yes, absolutely. So you undergo familiarization, and then after that, you require certification to operate that.
And we have certified handlers or certified
No.
operators?
That is forthcoming.
I'm looking at the second quarter financial report. And it actually, excuse me, it actually shows that your department, at the end of fiscal second quarter, there's actually a surplus. And so this is where I'm kind of confused and trying to understand if there truly is a need for overtime expenses, or are these already inclusive of overtime expenses? Or if not, then where is this money coming from? Or this is inaccurate reporting by OMB and finance, so.
I don't even know where to begin. You know, if you want my honest opinion, we may be getting, X amount of dollars figures from finance, but by the time we submit a request and it goes to OMB, that X amount of dollars differs. It varies by, substantial numbers. So how do I explain that to you? I don't even have the answer, but I can tell you that even, I was here, I kind of caught that earlier with DPS where you guys were asking them about our situation with CJPA. We have similar situation with CJPA. So I was going to point that out, during miscellaneous, but now that we're discussing it, I cannot answer that question that you have. No.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have for now. Anything else from the members? All right. So I guess with that, Deputy Commissioner, I know there are several requests by the members, and if you can provide the committee with those reports so that we have a better understanding of your finances that aren't really represented well in the reports that we are sharing with you. Again, while many may see this proposed budget as zero funded activities for each agency, there is right now a proposal to provide for $250,000 to the municipality, with the understanding that there are several revolving accounts in all or most of the departments, as well as within the mayor's office, that they could even use to provide for their operations. And so if it means having to divvy up that $250,000 for each agency, then that's something that we'll consider if there's really a need for it within each department. Otherwise, like as with the current fiscal year, $100,000 was provided to the mayor's office with the understanding and hope that departments will reach out to the mayor to see what other assistance can be provided. From my understanding and with my discussions from some employees, I don't know if their department heads are sharing the request with the mayor, or if there's some miscommunication or disconnect, then it'd be nice to hear about it so that we can try to address it through the budget process, as well as address the critical needs of each individual agency. And so with that, thank you very much for your time here. And it seems like there's something that you would like to provide.
I do want to submit this to your committee, and this is the concern that I was trying to raise up during miscellaneous, but obviously there's none. This is the concern with CJPA issue, similar to that of DPS, where it's under a grant, CJPA, personnel that is involved.
Captain Cabo wasn't familiar with who may be the representative. Do you know of any representative for Rota?
Well, we got alerted by Conrad, a certain Conrad from CJPA, what's his last name? Regis, who happened to call us and let us know or let us aware that this grant is expiring this year in January, right? So we got the alert before the holidays, Christmas, I believe. So after the holidays, we try to address these concerns, but it's just unfortunate that it carries on, and now we're incurring approximately 140,000+, I believe, for the cost share that was drawn down from that account, a non-existent account, so they're billing us now with that. And as I explained to my superior officers here, that, that was one of the reasons why we requested that these folks, that 4 personnel, would be reinstated at 100% local from the current budget, which it is. And I don't understand why we're getting billed with that amount of dollars, only to find out that it was us that is responsible to prepare the RFP, submit those RFP, so that they get reinstated at 100% local. We were never aware, and that's the adverse effect of not having a CJPA representative here, because everything now falls under our hand. It was inadvertent, it was not intentional. We never close our eye on those kind of issues, but it's giving us a black eye right now.
So they're billing you 142,000? Is that what you said?
We're gonna have to come up with that amount so that we cover that cost. I don't know where to get that amount.
Okay. I would have to go back, so these were 50-50, right?
That's correct, and I provided a narrative of, what transpired in a chronological order, with what actions we've taken, and from when the information we received, and so forth.
So this has been going on since 2022, yet this wasn't even brought to the attention of the department since then. I mean, it's been 2 to 3 years.
Because we were fully aware of the situation. So that we requested that 4 personnel be reinstated at 100%, which is exactly what's happening today with the current budget. What I don't understand is that account is closed in January 31st of this year, but the drawdown continues, so it's a non-existent account. And now it's poking us in the eye by having to find $140,000+ to cover the shortfall on that account.
But are you experiencing any issues in getting these 4 paid currently, moving forward?
No, because they're back at 100% now.
Sorry, so you're not aware of any Rota representative that sits on, do you know who was the last?
Last time I checked, it was Mr. James Magnolia, and there's another individual, but that's many months ago. That was, I believe, back in 2006. We're on the 24th already.
Okay. So thank you for sharing this. This is a concern. Maybe this is something we'll look further into and then try to schedule a meeting with Mr. Regis, you said?
That's correct.
All right. Again, thank you to you, Deputy Commissioner, and to your team for coming in today. And if there's anything we missed in addition to what we are going to expect, please feel free to share with the committee in regards to your revised budget submission that isn't reflected in the governor's proposal. And so if there's anything else that you'd like to also include in that, please feel free to share it with the committee members. And so,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I truly appreciate the opportunity. So again, that's it for us. We stand ready to receive anything from you guys, or we stand ready to, accept any request that you guys may submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, members, we now move on to announcements. Anything from the members? We do have, our next budget hearing will be with the Secretary of Finance, where we can ask a lot of the questions that were left unanswered here in Rota. And so that will be on Tuesday, the 30th at 9 a.m. in the Senate chamber. All right. If there's nothing else, again, Homer, thing I'd like to make note of, I would like to thank the judiciary and the court staff here at the Rota Central Justicia for their hospitality, as well as the assistance they provided to the legislature. And so with that, members, can I get a motion for adjournment?
So
All right, motion was made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. This committee meeting is hereby adjourned at 5:55 p.m. Thank you.